It's great to be joined again by Aaron Parnas, who is a political commentator, an attorney, also host of the Parnas Perspective. And am I even right about that, Aaron? Like, do you consider yourself a commentator? Because I think on some level, you also are just reporting what's in the news.
Yeah, I try not to be a commentator. I try to just be a reporter as much as possible. So it really just depends, I guess, on how you want to label me. But how are you?
I'm a media offender now, and I'm living under that reality. What do you think about all of that in terms of? I mean, you're a lawyer. I spoke to Mark Elias recently, and he said, "Listen, when it's the White House that creates such a list." You always could sue and make a show of suing, but the truth is that you'd really need to demonstrate that being on that list is creating some specific harm or that someone's targeting you or that the point of putting you on the list is like that just being on the list itself does not seem actionable.
Oh yeah, I don't. I actually, I would even disagree with Mark. I don't think you can sue the White House for this. I mean, it to me, it seems more of like parody than anything. And parody's protected speech. So I'm not actually. I don't think you can sue. I think it's just the White House trying to put a target on your back, on Brian's back, on other people's backs. I think that's the goal. So glad you're staying safe.
One of the things that I do think is interesting about what you do, what I do, and everybody kind of has their own platforms that they spend more time on and do it a little bit differently is the the more that there are attacks against people doing what we do, the more it reinforces that we're actually making an impact, making a dent, and that this entire thing is starting to be an important part of the discussion, which I find hugely flattering, but even more just reinforcing the importance of the work that we're doing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I take it as a badge of honor. I get like death threats every day at this point. And it's insane. It's terrifying, but I do wear it as a badge of honor. It means that we're doing something right. So I would just say keep it up.
What do you think as you saw the Supreme Court decisions earlier this week? There were some on Monday and then some on Tuesday. Of course, there were so many important topics, including certainly what fortunately didn't happen when it comes to birthright citizenship. We also saw issues of sports, more social issues, others. Other than the decisions themselves, what matters after these sorts of decisions in terms of like sometimes you hear, well, we're going to try to go a different route to get the same outcome. Like Trump said, if the Supreme Court wouldn't let us do what we wanted to do, then we'll go through Congress. And like it actually doesn't seem like you can really do that. Which of these do you think are going to have follow on effects that really matter?
Yeah, for sure. And I see so many comments. Thank you guys. You guys are all awesome. Make sure to subscribe to David and me if you haven't. I think regarding the Supreme Court, I have two big takeaways from the end of this term. The first is the slaughter decision, which I think is actually the most egregious decision by the Supreme Court in the past 50 years, 60 years. I mean, when I speak to Republicans, they wanted this slaughter outcome more than they wanted Roe v. Wade overturned. That's how big of a deal this was for them because it overturned Humphrey's executor, 90 years of precedent, yada, yada, yada. But it essentially tears down any independence of the FTC, FEC, and LRB. And here's where we're going to see impacts from the slaughter decision. You had the mail in voting decision, which protected mail in voting, right? But what Trump can now do is he can go and fire every single governor on the board of governors in the USPS. He can appoint his own USPS board of governors, essentially unanimous, and make it such that the USPS no longer sends mail-in ballots to states that he doesn't want them to send to. Right? There's an outcome right there. Now the courts are going to go back and forth, but ultimately it's going to go up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is going to probably side with Trump on that. That's number one. I think the second takeaway I have in all of these cases is the birthright citizenship case, not in that the court upheld it, but rather that it was a 5-4 decision, in my opinion. And it really, I mean, functionally it was because even Kavanaugh said that the executive order was constitutional. He would have upheld birthright citizenship on a statutory basis, not on a constitutional basis. So you had 4 justices willing to essentially rewrite the 14th Amendment. That is, in a lot of ways, terrifying to me because what it means is that in the next 2.5 years, and say there's a Republican that wins in 2028, potentially the next 6 years, a liberal justice, Justice Roberts, Justice Barrett, pass away, get very sick, retire, anything can happen. You now will then have 5 votes to overturn birthright citizenship and by product, really change the Constitution as you know. And so we are 1 vote away from. And I think that is a major takeaway. Congress can't legally go and change birthright citizenship, can't rewrite the 14th Amendment. You need a constitutional amendment. And I actually, you know what? I am fully in support of a constitutional convention. I think that the Constitution needs to be amended in a lot of respects. I think it hasn't been touched in a long time. And it is very hard to amend the Constitution. So, my hot take is I think we need to make it easier to amend the Constitution. I think we start at the Second Amendment. I think we start at the Fourth Amendment. I think there are plenty of amendments that I would like to go and look at as well. And I would like to add amendments, take away amendments. I mean, there are so many things that you can do with this Constitution. So I'm glad some Republicans are finally on board. But those are my two big takeaways, essentially.
One of the things I've been saying is while I would disagree with their view on birthright citizenship, I would much more respect an approach that said, listen, we all are on the same page as to what it says right now. We're not going to go this route of going, well, when they wrote it, they didn't mean. Let's just concede that it is what it is. We believe it should be changed, and we're going to go through the actual process to do that, which is to get a constitutional amendment. And then there can be a debate about it, because when Trump goes, no one else has birthright citizenship, obviously that's not true. When some more nuanced people go, well, no one has birthright citizenship exactly the way that we do, that's closer to the truth. And if there really is an appetite to say, we want to change how we define citizenship, we have a process, and I would respect them going, we're going to win the will of the people. We're going to convince people that we want to change that. What I don't respect is the trying to re-engineer and wordsmith on the 14th Amendment when they're never willing to do it with the second or when it's inconvenient. It's merely a plan born out of what's politically convenient today.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not even just the Second Amendment or the 14th Amendment. I mean, a lot of people want term limits for justices, right, on the Supreme Court.
Yep.
You legally can't do that through Congress. The Constitution provides that there are no term limits for Supreme Court justices, that they have lifetime tenure. So you want term limits for justices, you have to get a constitutional amendment passed. I mean, that's the only way to do it legally. And so I think that we need to look at the Constitution as a whole. I'm glad Republicans are finally coming around to it. So let's see what happens.
When it comes to looking at 26 and 28, I'm really interested in a situation where oftentimes the narrative about elections is that one of the two parties is very divided, but not usually both at the same time. It's either Democrats who are fighting an internal battle or it's Republicans. But as we look at, depending on what happens in 26, 28 could be interesting in that on the Republican side, you could have a battle between those who want a continuation of MAGA and those who don't. And then on the Democratic side, you could have a battle between those who are more in the sort of Newsom, Pritzker, Shapiro, Wes Moore side of things, those who are, forget about that, even more in the Jeffries Schumer camp of things, which is a more like really keep things the way they are, and then those who are more on the side of the sorts of folks who have been winning Democratic primaries recently, like we saw in New York and Colorado, more Plattner type. What is your sense of what the dynamics would be if both sides are engaged in these internal battles as to the future of their parties, and how that might be different than what we've seen before?
Well, I think what we're seeing on both sides is this kind of they're sick and tired of the establishment. The average everyday American is tired of the status quo on both sides. That's why they elected Trump on the Republican side. They wanted someone to go in and, quote, shake things up. Whether or not he's doing that, that's the voter's choice, right? On the Democratic side, people are tired of the establishment. I mean, even in Colorado's first district, where Mela Kiros won this week, Diana DeGette, the former congresswoman there, she was one of the most progressive members of Congress. I mean, she was endorsed by the chairwoman of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. I mean, she very, very progressive member of Congress. Mela Kiros is just a tad bit more progressive, but she represents a new face. And I like new faces in Congress. I think that we need across the board. I've been a big proponent of term limits. I've been a big proponent of uh, I do think primaries serve a very functional purpose in our society, because I think that any member of Congress who can't win their own primary, that's their fault, right? If they're not ingrained in the community well enough, that's their fault for losing. And so we're seeing a major shift. I think it's this anti-establishment push, and I would even argue like the Newsoms of the world are anti-establishment in some way, shape, or form. I think Newsom coming out calling for a billionaire's tax is very anti-establishment. It's very anti-status quo. I think you're going to see more and more folks kind of embrace this Let's get a new generation of leaders in. Let's get a new fresh faces in. It's happening across the board, and it'll continue to happen.
There's this line, and I think it's usually true, which is the more robust and hard fought a primary is, the stronger the position of the eventual winner. And I've basically agreed with that for a very long time. I wonder, in looking at the Republican side, if it gets very ugly between Trump wants to pick an heir, but is so unpopular that a lot of the Republican Party revolts against what Trump wants. Vance and Rubio both go for it, and it gets very ugly. Tucker's trying to start his own party, reportedly, which, if he can pull 3 or 4% away from Republicans, could destroy Republicans. I do you see a Republican primary that is extremely robust and actually does hurt the eventual nominee?
I don't actually. I think it's going to be a two-person race in the Republican primary, and I would argue I think Rubio is going to come out on top and be the nominee by the end of it. And I think it's going to be a hard-fought battle. I totally see it being potentially Vance Rubio as the ticket, or Rubio someone else if it's not Vance. I think that's what's going to end up happening. I think the whole Tucker thing is a bit anticlimactic. Elon tried to start his own party; it didn't work. It's the same thing's going to happen with Tucker. What I will say is, though, if Tucker runs as an independent and not starts his own party, just runs as an independent, I think that could hurt the Republicans, but we'll have to see if that happens. But I actually think on the Republican side, you'll have a less kind of chaotic primary in terms of numbers. I think you only have a two-way race, whereas on the Democratic side, everyone and their mother's going to run, like 20 people are going to run. And Lord only knows what's going to happen there.
When it comes to the role of independent media now and how it's really changed over the last several years, what is your sense of what role we and also right-wing influencers will have on this next presidential election? Because it'll really be the first one where the independent media space will be this big.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's an important time to recognize that independent media is the media, right? Like, I mean, I think that is the the mantra that people need to accept. I mean, just even look over the past 24 hours, independent media has been constantly reporting on the fact that the first Air Force veteran, the first active duty service member came out, called for Trump's impeachment, and was arrested. Mainstream media was relatively quiet. And I think that heading into the 2028 election, especially, you're going to have creators moderate debates. You're going to have um, candidates go on all of our shows regularly. I mean, and you have too. I mean, we've already interviewed almost every single 2028 hopeful, right? I mean, it's only going to continue heading into November of 2028. So I think we're the future.
What do you think is the landscape right now in terms of the platforms? And what I mean by that is, we all know that different platforms have different norms and expectations. We're on a whole bunch of these platforms. The strategy that applies on YouTube may be different than the one that applies on TikTok, Substack, etc. Do you think that the platforms are increasingly involved in the day to day of how the news and politics landscape shakes out? Or, like in the early days, news and politics was this backwater where, like, it took a long time to even get reps assigned to news and politics folks on YouTube. And it was just like, yeah, news and politics is this other thing. It's this appendage, but it's not really the core of what we do. Do you think platforms are starting to take the space we're in more seriously?
Oh, 100%. And I actually think we're going to see more attempts to crack down on folks like us on certain platforms. I think platforms want to suppress certain content, especially platforms like, for example, Twitter is a very right wing platform. Will try to crack down on the left. I think you may even see TikTok try to do similar things. We've seen it with Epstein and elsewhere. And I think it just ultimately depends. Like, do the platforms need something from the White House? Right? If they need something from the White House, then we're going to see people like us kind of be suppressed. They don't need something from the White House, and we'll be fine. I think that's why Substack is so important, because it's really just the only platform, in my opinion, where we have true, complete ownership of what we do.
I think a lot of people hear that, and I talk about that also, and they don't necessarily understand what that means. And the way I explain it is, if you look at my YouTube channel, I can speak to my 3.6 million subscribers. Cool. I can do that for as long as my account is not limited and for as long as I have my account. But I don't own any of that data. If my account were to be shut down overnight, and by the way, it wouldn't even have to be YouTube who does it. if you get hit, if the right makes a campaign of bogus copyright claims against me, at least temporarily, they might be able to get me limited. I would have no way of reaching those 3.6 million people. What makes Substack different, and it's not a question of praise or criticism, it's just a fact, is we can take our subscriber lists on Substack and download them. And what that means is then if anything happens on any platform, we have this database we own, and we can say to people, hey, this is what happened. And I wish other platforms did that. They don't. And this is why it's so important that people do follow us on Substack. It costs nothing. And that way we can be in touch. And being able to communicate what's happening is often half the battle.
100%, and that's why people need to go and subscribe, right? People need to subscribe, build independent media on here because this really is the present and the future, and it's the only platform that we truly own.
Aaron, do you think in our last few minutes here, do you think that over the next couple of cycles that we are just going to see the existing infrastructure grow and become more mature? Or do you expect some kind of disruptor in terms of either a new platform or some new entity, which could be anything from regulation to financial injection? Do you expect a big change to the landscape we're in?
I think so. I don't know what it is. I think there will be a change. I think that there will be some type of regulatory scheme that's at least pushed. I don't know if it'll be implemented.
Really?
Push. I do. I mean, I've been hearing it all the time from folks on the right and the left who want something done. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. I kind of like where we're at. I kind of like the Wild West a little bit. I don't like when big government tries to get involved in like my social media. So we'll see. I don't know.
Aaron Parnas, he's recording on planes. He's recording underneath stairwells. You should see the places I've seen Aaron record and publish videos. Always good to talk to you. The Parnas Perspective. Make sure you're following him on Substack and on all other platforms. Keep up the good work, and we'll talk again very soon.
Peace.
Talk to you later. Bye.